Harness your independent voice. Together, we make it heard. Welcome to Independent Voice. We believe in the power of independent thinking, where truth triumphs over negativity, and where your voice can spark change. At IV, we are dedicated to amplifying voices that often go unheard. Whether you're here to be informed, contribute, or find inspiration, your voice is vital in shaping the conversation. Independent Voice, where authenticity meets integrity, harnessing thoughts and igniting change. Subscribe now and unleash the power of your independent voice. Our goal is to make a difference that lasts.
Greetings everyone and welcome. This is Independent Voice. I am Mame. Today's conversation is not an easy one, but it's a necessary one. It's about immigration. Immigration is one of the most emotionally charged topics in our public discourse. It carries fear, hope, politics, identity, and very real human consequences. But emotion alone cannot guide policy, and narratives alone cannot replace facts. So today, we're going to slow down and look carefully at what the data, the patterns, and the realities actually show us. Let's begin with what is verifiable. According to the recent Department of Homeland Security briefings and independent reporting, in 2025, approximately 2.5 million undocumented immigrants left the United States. 2.5 million. Of those, about 1.9 left voluntarily through self-departure. Let me say that again. 1.9 undocumented individuals left voluntarily through self-departure. Roughly 600,000 were formally removed through immigration enforcement. Let me just say the breakdown one more time. 2.5 million undocumented immigrants left the United States in 2025. Of those, 1.9 left voluntarily through what's called self-departure. About 600,000 of the removal were done through immigration enforcement. What does that mean? It means the overwhelming majority of departures were not forced removal. They were choices made within the constraints of law, policy, opportunity, and consequences. Those numbers matter. They do matter because they immediately challenge some of the loudest assumptions in our public debates. Voluntary departure does not mean someone wanted to leave. No, that's not what it means. It means someone chose the least damaging path available. It often reflects a desire to preserve eligibility for future legal return. I said legal return. Avoid permanent immigration penalties, maintain dignity in the process, protect family options, or simply avoid detention. These are rational human decisions, not acts of resistance, not acts of violence. They are not acts of defiance. They are acts of calculation in a system with limited options. This is where we must be very careful. Immigrant communities are not a monolith. They are diverse, and they're diverse in legal status, political views, cultural backgrounds, economic conditions, and personal motivations. There's no evidence that immigrant communities, especially undocumented immigrants, are collectively organizing to obstruct enforcement or to instigate violence. There's none. In fact, the data suggests the opposite. Most people are quietly navigating difficult choices with caution, restraint, and long-term thinking. When incidents involving law enforcement occur, protests often follow, and these protests frequently involve civil rights groups, political activists, advocacy organizations, community allies, and concerned citizens. They're broad, they're diverse. They are not led by undocumented immigrants as a united movement. Let me just say that they are not led by undocumented immigrants as a unified movement. It's important we say that clearly, because when we blur those distinctions, we unintentionally misrepresent entire communities who are not driving those narratives. Here is where honesty matters. Some advocacy today is no longer about reform. It's just not. It's about narrative control. It's about political leverage. It's about using emotionally sensitive issues to advance unrelated ideological agendas. And it is deeply concerning. Because when immigration becomes a political weapon, it loses its humanity. And when tragedy becomes a talking point, real solutions disappear. Narratives do not stay in activist space. They travel. They shape public perception. They affect how legally present immigrant communities are viewed. They influence trust. They affect policy. They affect safety. And they affect opportunity. When fraud scandals occur, such as those we've seen in Minnesota and other places, and when emotionally charged enforcement incidents occur at the same time, the public does not always separate complexity from convenience. They form impressions. And those impressions often fall on communities who had nothing to do with either events. We must be able to hold individuals accountable. We must be able to investigate misconduct. We must be able to correct injustice. But we must also reject collective blame. No community should be judged by the actions of a few. No population should be reduced to the loudest narratives surrounding them. And no policy discussion should be driven by outrage alone. Let's also speak honestly. Some people used legal loopholes. Some pathways were unclear. Some policies were exploited. And now, many are paying the price for that confusion. That reality does not require cruelty, but it does require clarity. A system that is inconsistent creates vulnerability, and vulnerability creates consequences. Responsible discourse requires facts before feelings, data before drama, humanity before politics, and accountability without cruelty. We can demand reform without destroying trust. We can advocate without misrepresenting, and we can care without manipulating tragedy. To immigrant communities watching, you are not defined by headlines. You are not defined by politics. You are not defined by narratives you did not create. Your choices, your restraint, your quiet courage, those are the real story. And the numbers support that truth. And to the general public, immigration is not chaos, it's complexity. It's law, policy, humanity, and consequences colliding, intersecting in imperfect systems. If we want solutions, we must first understand reality. If we truly care about reform, dignity, and stability, then we must protect truth from distortion. We must protect people from being reduced to narratives. And we must protect dialogue from being hijacked by agendas. Because when the truth disappears, everyone loses. Everyone loses. Thank you for watching. I am Mami, and this is Independent Voice. Now remember, use your voice to make a difference and never to silence others.